So good morning to everybody on today's call. My name is Jim McDonald with Torrey Hills Capital. Pleased to be hosting our call today featuring DynaResource, a junior gold producer demonstrating improved operational efficiencies through the implementation of an optimization program at its flagship San Jose de Gracia mine in Sinaloa, Mexico. Additional details of which you will hear over the next 60 minutes. Company trades in the US on the OTCQX under the ticker symbol DYNR. And joining me today from the company, I've got Rohan Hazelton, President and CEO, and Catherine Pride, Investor Relations. Before turning the call over to Rohan and Catherine, just want to go through logistics fairly quickly. Nothing new for people who have been on calls with me in the past, but just a reminder. Our webinars are intended to replicate our in-person meetings, which we like and encourage to be as interactive as possible. With that in mind, if you have questions along the way, please feel free to ask them. The best way to do so is use the navigation pane at the bottom of the screen, click on the Q&A or the chat button. One of us will see that, get those questions presented and then answered for you. If for some reason we don't get to them immediately, it's not that we're ignoring them or don't see them. It's simply that we know that they'll be answered in the next one or two or three slides, and so we're going to let the normal course of the presentation address those. Alternatively, if you want to speak with Rowan or Catherine at any point during the call, we welcome that as well. The only way to do that is, again, use the navigation pane, click on the raise hand button. We'll see that, unmute your microphone, and allow for direct conversation back and forth. As with all calls, I will remain on throughout, but remove myself from both video and audio so as not to be a distraction, but we'll help manage questions as they come in. With that said, enjoy the presentation. Good timing, terrific story, and I'll turn everything over to Rohan and Catherine.
Great. Thanks a lot, Jim. Appreciate it. And thanks everyone for joining. Look forward to a conversation and discussion over the next hour here. So again, I'm Rohan Hazelton, CEO of DynaResource. We are a gold producer operating the 100% owned San Jose de Gracia mine in western Mexico. We are in production and profitable and growing this year. We expect to produce approximately 30,000 gold ounces in gold concentrate, and we've been in production for almost 10 years. The company and the property has exciting and exploration potential, really in the right district with the right characteristics here to be a multi-million ounce deposit and aiming to increase production in the next several years to approximately 50,000 ounces per year. It's an excellent opportunity for new investors, and really, when we'll go through that and what really has essentially been, structured and operated almost like a private company. We do have the OTCQX listing, but we're very tightly held, and we're looking to expand that shareholder base in these efforts this year. I joined the company just in the middle of last year and was invited by the board in order to optimize and grow the operations, having experience in high growth mining companies for the past 25 years, including especially as an early employee of Goldcorp / Wheaton River, as well as creating Silver Wheaton. And this asset I see of having both a great potential to grow in terms of production and ounces, but also be a great base for growing a company, and that's what we're looking to do. Again, along the way, please feel free to ask questions, and just hear just a little bit more detail on the background of DynaResource and the San Jose de Gracia deposit. I mean, this deposit was mined over 100 years ago is really a bonanza grade deposit. So from 1890 to 1910, produced approximately 1 million ounces at 1 to 2 ounces per ton, or 30 to 60 plus grams per ton. And then really what's very unusual compared to other deposits in the region, it really wasn't mined again commercially for mostly the next 100 years. There was a little bit of commercial mining in the 50s and 60s, and most of that subsequent has been some artisanal mining or none at all. And we also have a historic resource on the deposit from 2012 of approximately 1.1 million ounces, and we're working on an update, which I'll go through a little bit more in detail to be published by the end of this quarter. That 1.1 million ounces also includes some potential, bulk tonnage or open pit potential, which at the moment we're focusing on the underground mine and mine expansion. So, why DynaResource, and why right now? I mean, this story is extremely unknown. I would imagine, many or most of you, may not have heard of the story. I certainly haven't myself before being approached to join this company, and has been, again, being financed and operated by a very small group of shareholders, and there's significant potential in terms of exploration to still grow the deposit. We see it as potentially multi-million ounce, but certainly plus million to million and a half kind of general direction. There's still high grade sort of information on the site from prior mining from that historical mining, and with significant high grade samples and so on. This year, again, we're looking to produce 30,000 ounces, and all-in sustaining costs between 1850 to 2050, just under $2,000 an ounce. Some of that higher AISC is due to capital improvements that we're still making. Since I joined in June of last year, our focus has been to improve the mill in particular, and also make improvements in the mine, and a focus on recoveries. We've been investing in some additional gravity circuits in the plant, and general improvements in the mill. Sorry, in the mine and other areas. We're looking to increase some capital in terms of mobile equipment and that's targeted for a little bit heavy in the first half of this year, and increasing AISC a little overall. Again, the long-term target of 50,000 ounces in the next, say, 2 to 3 years, we think is achievable in sort of three areas: increasing recoveries approximately 10%, focusing on improving grades in sort of the 5-10% range, and then looking at potential mill expansion from what is today 800 tons a day to 11 or 1,200 tons per day. In order to make some of the operational improvements that we've made in the last 8 months, we brought in pretty much a brand new management team, a few people in corporate, and then also, and most importantly, at the mine, a new general manager in September, a fellow Luis Portugal that I worked with previously at Goldcorp, and at the time he was the chief geologist at the San Dimas Teotita mine, which has a lot of similarities to the San Jose de Gracia mine. And he's been bringing a lot of expertise himself and a few other new geologists on the team, to reinterpret and find value in the deposits that we have, and in our exploration program going forward.
Hey,
We're
Rohan,
continuing to focus. Yep.
sorry if I can interrupt. There was a question that came in, just regarding AISC and how low could that get without capital improvements, and then maybe part two of that. Um, as you increase, production to the 50,000 ounce level, does that give you operational, efficiencies of scale that further lower that?
Sure. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think in the short term, and again, especially once we've invested some of these capital, improvements in the first half of this year, and I'd see, potential to reduce that by 10%, let's say, and then another, 10 to 15%, with some of those economies of scale, as you mentioned, and even, some of the targets that we have in terms of, recoveries and higher production. So my target for AISC, in the next, say, several years would be to get that down to sort of 1,500, 1,600, 1,500 level. Today, our AISC is again just under $2,000 an ounce, but our direct cash costs today are around the 1,500 level. So both of those would, certainly would the cash cost would decrease with operational, improvements in economies of scale, and our AISC, would decrease with, as our capital intensity decreases.
Great. Thank you much. I'll let you continue.
Great, thanks. Thanks for the question. So yeah, in this year in 2025, some of our key targets for news flow and catalyst for the stock, by the end of this quarter, we expect to put out an updated resource. Again, we only have the historical resource from 2012. This resource will be in accordance with US SK 1300, as well as shortly after we'll put out in Canadian Standard NI 43-101. And also importantly, this will be the first reserve statement, which will be an important factor for both our next major milestone of looking to uplist in the second half of this year, and also in terms of some accounting, I guess, differences when we compare ourselves to other peer companies. Given that we don't have a published reserve, we are required to capital or to expense, all our capital items, including, what would otherwise be underground development, and even essentially all PP&E. And therefore, when you look at that, compare our statements to other peer companies, there is some distortion. And so, when we put out the reserve statement, we'll be able to, demonstrate, be comparable to other companies. We've reinitiated an exploration program, which had been put on hold for funding reasons earlier last year. So, since I joined, we've started to put a focus on exploration again. We've increased exploration from underground, and we'll be starting a surface drill program in Q2 of this year. We expect to drill somewhere in the range of 15,000 to 20,000 meters in 2025, from surface and underground. In the second half of this year, we're targeting an uplist or IPO on a major exchange in North America. Most likely, or one that we're looking at closely, is NASDAQ Tier 3, and very likely do a concurrent raise, along with that uplist, for a combination of both, possible listing requirements, but also for use of proceeds, would primarily be to accelerate and double down on our exploration program, which currently this year is targeted at 2.5 to 3 million. And we believe we could easily double that program, and still manage that exploration program, and then look to, further from that, drilling information, look to update, an updated resource estimate, and then grow, both grow the deposit and our plans for production from there, and also look to grow the company. I mean, that's a major, I think this company can be a fantastic base for potentially for, additional, bolt-on acquisitions and/or, consolidation, possibly in the general region or in Mexico in general, but even outside of that, I've spent, my whole career in higher growth mining companies, and see that this can be a great platform to build from.
Quick question before you move to the next slide. From Steve, what is the anticipated number of shares in the offering?
Well, I'd say roughly, the kind of numbers that make sense would be in potentially a $3 to $5 million range. If you were to, if the price were today, that would be 3 to 5 million shares.
Okay. Hopefully that helps, Steve. Thank you again, and I'll let you continue.
Thanks. So in terms of some of our, our targets for 2025, we've touched on a number of these already. On the financial side, I'll, add that, our target for sustaining capital is approximately $5 to $6 million. Again, a lot of that focused in the plant, and part of that is in a gravity circuit. In the past, when the production was smaller, there was a gravity circuit in this mill. As the mill grew, um, the, there are certain aspects of the plant that was sort of experienced growing pains, and there was no and the gravity circuit was removed. We're investing in a series of Falcon concentrators that we expect to, in the short term this year, to improve recoveries at least 5%, and then in the medium term, increase that by 10%. And continuing to look yeah, at ways to reduce other direct costs through part of that just through improved management controls and improved maintenance, especially which had, when first arrived in the middle of last year, there was an underinvestment in maintenance generally. On the exploration side, as I mentioned, sort of target of budget of 2.5 to 3 million, of which approximately 50% of that would be from underground and 50% from surface. And I'll go through a little bit more where that is likely to be. Um, just this slide shows our production by month in 2024, in terms of grade and tons on the left and ounce production on the right. And we're certainly very focused on uh, on both increasing grade and then also focusing on maintaining a consistent tonnage. On that point, we've introduced a new mining contractor, underground mine contractor, focused just on improving development and increasing our ramps and developments. We're in the right zip code, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with many of those deposits and the companies that operate them. We're in the Sierra Madres, in the lower part of the Sierra Madres, um, in the northern part of Sinaloa, about 240 miles north of Mazatlan, and again with a lot of the similar characteristics of narrow vein systems, epithermal systems, and a lot of similarities to, as I mentioned, Tail Tita, where Luis and several of the other new team members have previously worked. In terms of the what we see as ounces today, and I'm referring to it as mineable inventory, since obviously we're in the process of putting out soon an updated resource estimate, and our existing one is historical. So as far as mineable inventory, uh, this graphic really is showing our existing block model today. And you can see the grade profile on the right in grams per ton. Generally our cutoff grade is 2 grams a ton, but obviously with the target of generally targeting 3 grams a ton or higher. And this existing, sort of resource and reserve, the historical one in 2012 had an average grade of 5.6 grams per ton, roughly in all categories. And we're looking at similar grade profile, a little higher maybe on the resource side, and in terms of ounces, something south of 500,000 ounces, somewhere in the 350 to 500,000 ounce range, and with a resource grade say of about 6 and reserve grade of about 5. I think there might have been a question, Jim.
There is a question. I wasn't going to interrupt you, but yeah. So, how do you get to site, and then how many full-time employees or how many full-time people are on site?
Sure. So there's road access, which is how basically all of our supplies and supplies in and concentrate out are carried. It's about a 150-kilometer road, although by as the crow flies, it's not that far. It's more like 80, 90 kilometers to from San Jose the Gracia town down to the closest kind of mid-sized town of Guamuchil. Um, and then most of our personnel, go up and down by on a rotation shift by bus, and unless they're locals, there's about 800 people in the local town. But there's a small airstrip, and so for key supplies and or key personnel, then we can fly in, fly out from any of the major cities in the region. Um, and we're transporting concentrate out every day down the mountain, and then 2 or 3 times a week we ship it to the port of Manzanillo.
Perfect. Thank you. Let you continue.
Sure, thanks. So here's another look at our overall property and resources, sort of with Google Earth. Down here on the bottom left-hand side is the small town of San Jose de Gracia, and then also our plant and camp and office. This whole distance here is sort of in the range of 5 kilometers or 5 miles and 8 kilometers or so. Um, our main operating, deposits are here in the center. And what's interesting to just demonstrate, the bright green pickaxe and shovel are historical, information from historical mining or historical adits and that, and that's only a portion of them. There's certainly there's significantly more than that in the general region, but importantly here up in the north of Tres Amigos is our more northern operating deposit. This whole area has some historical information, plus ground sampling and things that we've done. Has some chip samples of 30 grams a ton, but it was never actually mined. The most are adits that go in sort of 40, 50 feet. And we see that as the whole northern region as being a very large part of our expansion potential. On the right-hand side, you can just see a map showing some of the geological features of our general region. This is the core part of our concession here, and the total area of our overall concession is about 10,000 hectares with an opportunity even to expand that further. So that there's a lot of untapped potential in terms of both some information that we have some information on or some idea of, and then also significant areas that have had no geological testing to date. On the left-hand side, you can just see a summary of drilling to date in the modern era. And again, going back to the idea there hadn't been modern mining or exploration on the property until the first group to come back into this property was 1992 with Peñoles, who did some drilling, and then a company, Golden Hemlock. And then it was in 1999 that DynaResource started to pick up and consolidate the concessions, which took a few years, and then undertook a sort of decades-long exploration program before starting to put into production. Initially at a very small scale, 100 tons per day, and then slowly expanding that over to what we have today is an 800 ton per day nameplate capacity. Just another further on our overall deposits and potential here. This is obviously now a cross section, and here the north is to the left here, with that northern region we're discussing. And a couple points to note. Our main operating deposits are Tres Amigos here, left of center, San Pablo, right of center, and then Mochomero, which we just put into production in the middle of last year. San Pablo has been in production more or less since in the entire operation of the company in almost 10 years, and Tres Amigos has been a large producer for most of the past 5 or 6 years. The depth of Tres Amigos is about 300 meters. All these deposits are accessed from surface by ramps, and they're really open, in all directions, and including at depth, and even sort of visually scanning across can see that we're not nearly that deep in San Pablo, and we've only just started in Mochomero. And so just even on that basis alone, let alone the additional drilling and other data that we have, there's potential to grow both these deposits plus our other targets. Just to mention those briefly, if you look at the target numbers 1, 2, say 5 and 6, You can see the faint lines that that represents the drill data that we have, and in some areas, such as in the center here, they're actually pretty widely spaced, indicating there's likely, even further room to grow even where we've already drilled. And importantly, up to the north here, there's been no drilling in the past at all, and just surface sampling and other geophysics type surveys. The and we're seeing, continued expansion of even the deposits that we do have, and a part of that is in great thanks to the skill set and approach that Luis and the team are bringing, and sort of bringing especially a new interpretation around structural geology. So in areas that we've had faulting, for example, here in to the south side of San Pablo, there's an area that previously, the company had not found or pursued the extension of veins. With Luis and the team just back in October, he sort of had a new interpretation, broke through and found extension of a very high grade zone. There's samples here of 80 grams per ton, and that's been a very strong producer this area for us, since October. And similarly in the north of Tres Amigos here, an area that also had sort of previously been, thought to not continue. And with new interpretations, we've gone through, and we're now finding the extension of the main Tres Amigos vein, and that's, a decent portion of our daily production coming from that Tres Amigos North, and again, strong indications that that would continue to the north again based on surface information that we have there, and that'll be the key focus of our surface drill campaign. Jim, there might have been a question.
There is. So the question is, what percentage of production comes from each of the areas, and where in this view do you expect the 2025 drilling?
Okay, so today it is approximately, it's not quite a third, but kind of close to a third, a third, a third. It's a little less in Tres Amigos, and then becoming a little more in Mochomera here, going forward. Now, and as far as drilling, our underground campaign, at the moment is again focused on the extensions from primarily from the Tres Amigos, uh, Mochomera here down to the further down to the south, and then going deeper in San Pablo. And then our surface drill, program will start in this sort of area right in the center of between Cesena and La Prieta, and then also starting in this area of Orange Tree.
And then are grades pretty similar between the deposits?
Um, you know, uh, they are on average, correct? Yes. I mean, in that, it's being a narrow vein system that, is anywhere from, zero point 0.8 meters to say 2.5, but averages say 1.5 meters. Obviously there's a lot of variability within a deposit, probably more variability within a deposit than between the deposits. Um, and in that, so variability in width and variabilities in grade. And one of our main focus, in terms of maintaining, stable production is having sufficient faces, open at all times, which is usually between 6 and 10, probably on average 8, sometimes as many as 12, but faces in order to be able to, balance, production capacity and grade.
Okay, great. That's good for now. I'll let you go.
Great, thanks. Um, we sort of touched on, so briefly, a little bit more detail on cap structure. We have just under 30 million basic shares outstanding, and that's the original, share basis of DynaResource. It hasn't been subject to any reverse split or so on. And on a fully diluted basis, 38 million shares. The additional dilutables, what I would say is, I would consider probably three-quarters of them to be essentially as common shares, given that they are convertible. The preferred shares and warrants are convertible into common shares with with essentially no additional consideration or minimal consideration. And the shareholders that own those, understand there's less than a half a dozen, understand that we'll need to clean that up, prior to an uplisting, in order to kind of clean up here the cap structure. But in general, it is still, extremely tight. It's 100% owned by individuals, hence, saying it's retail. There are no institutional shareholders at this time. This company's been financed, for the past 25 years through, essentially through, what you might call, friends and family. The about a dozen shareholders make up, a dozen or 15 make up 70% of the company, and two shareholders make up 50%. In terms of the largest shareholder that owns 30% on a fully diluted basis, it's a family office in Dallas, run by a fellow called Matt Rose. He was the CEO of BNSF, Burlington Northern Santa Fe, when it was sold to Berkshire Hathaway, and then he stayed on there with working with Warren for another decade. Um, the the shareholder, the key shareholders have been extremely supportive of this company, and throughout the growth and development along the way, and then including, and invited me to join in the middle of last year, when and since joining from a small group of just four shareholders or less, uh, I raised 2.5 million in June and another 6 million in October, in order to be able to affect the optimization program and capital improvements that we're making in the company. We have approximately $4 million in the balance sheet right now. Um, and again, as mentioned, looking to do an uplist, in the second half of this year. Um, and certainly if there were folks interested, even in prior to, a public offering, there may be opportunities to from, with existing shareholders potentially in terms of um, of some kind of arrangement.
Hey, Rohan, if I can ask a
Yep.
question on your existing shareholders who, as you described, have been there for a long period of time.
Mhm.
Um, did somebody come to them with the project originally, or are they part of the founding group that said, "Hey, let's go explore this area"? And how did that come about?
Yeah, so the I guess I would say majority of that group within the 12 or 15 shareholders have been there, essentially from day one. And yes, we're part of that group for, help finance this company, in the early days of, concession and exploration and so on. Um, the two major shareholders, have probably been involved more like 15 years, so that's still a very long time. But more in around the time of putting the project into production. But yeah, it's I mean, you can see easily from our OTC listing that that we have very thin trading, and overall, our shareholders have been, buy and hold, and buy, hold, and obviously in many cases, reinvest in order to move this project forward. Um,
Perfect. Thank you.
Here's just one way to look at value of the company, and this is just enterprise value to production. The reason we have these numbers is that A, they were readily available, and B, uh, you know, we have we have production data that's out there, but we don't have a current resource which we're working on, or an NPV, so it makes it a little harder to compare in that manner. Certainly in a high level glance at other kind of peer companies, that we believe there's room for re-rating. Importantly, some of these companies, or many of them, do have multi-asset um, portfolios, and again, that's a key component of what we're we're starting to look at on a very, on a very high level basis, but as we continue to optimize San Jose de Gracia, we'll put more focus on looking at ways to grow and also diversify the asset base.
And we did have a couple of questions come in again.
Yep.
So from Steve, is there a line of credit?
Yeah. So thanks, Steve. We currently have it's just over $9 million uh, line with Ocean Partners, our major offtaker, or our only offtaker. Ocean Partners has been a great supporter of the company since they came in maybe almost 4 years ago, and buying the concentrate on fair terms. And over, since that period of time have provided capital to the company in terms of both credit lines as well as equity to the tune of, I think in total, at least $7 million, which is actually unusual for Ocean Partners and shows their commitment and optimism of the project. With respect to the credit line we have, we're looking to pay down, hopefully pay down 50% of that this year and keep that off, and/or um, uh, be able to maybe restructure some of that in terms of term it out with a little bit longer tenor.
And then follow up to that is, are there any royalty agreements? And also, what is the future CapEx estimate?
Sure. So no, there's no royalty on the property. And in a status quo, sort of environment, I would say the sustaining capital, looks a little less than what we have here on the books, is probably in the 4 million range, plus, 3.5, 4 million range, possibly, including or plus a little bit more exploration. But in a scenario of growing production, which is our target in a few years to 50,000 ounces, we would see, continued and, continued exploration. And like I said, probably a doubling down or more in terms of accelerating that exploration, into the tune roughly of, say 5, 6, 7 million a year. Um, and then in order to, affect a major expansion in the plant, that's also probably in the $5 to $7 million range for expanding, say, to 1,100, 1,200 tons a day.
Okay, and then outside of CapEx, what's the company's current burn rate?
So the company, we're on an operating basis, we are profitable. On a net cash flow basis, we're still sort of slightly in the red, in the sort of in the less than $1 million range, as we continue to make these principal payments on our credit line. And again, the part of the we'd like to restructure those and turn them out to reduce our principal commitments per month, and as well as um, like payments out to the VAT EVA taxes in Mexico.
Okay. Next question here, and there's two left right now. But next one is, many companies talk about an uplist, but never do it or don't in the anticipated timeline. Any concerns on your end completing this in Q3?
Um, so I would say, so thanks for the question. No, it's a major goal of ours, and it was certainly one of the primary mandates when I joined the company. Um, our really only, I guess, prerequisite in order to be able to do this is getting the technical report out there, which again we're targeting for the end of this quarter. If that were to be delayed, it might be a very short delay, by a month or less, but that's, we're working on an end of March timeline. So I don't see other impediments to being able to do this, and frankly, it yeah, it's a core strategic imperative of DynaResource to be able to do this. If we want to be able to access, obviously, greater capital markets, both for internal growth of our project and or um, and or looking at having a currency that we could be using in any sort of M&A, another corporate transaction context, then we have to have something greater than an OTC listing. So, um, as far as timing, I again, assuming, we have the report, and since we're already a SEC registrant, we've been for almost 20 years. We're, in good standing with the SEC. We check a lot of boxes that there's certainly nothing to prevent us from, being able to do it this year and likely, being able to do it in the third quarter.
Excellent. Appreciate that. And the last question currently says, looks like you have upside potential in grades and volume growth. Is there a chance you can speed up any of this as new investors will be looking for that? And then part two, also when you're looking to eliminate the preferred, also when are you looking to eliminate the preferred as they think that may be an overhang?
Sure. So good questions. As far as the preferreds, I mean, I'm looking to eliminate that, prior to or in conjunction with an uplist. A And then as far as accelerating our plans, I think they can be, I mean, we need additional, capital to be able to accelerate the exploration, program, and that's why we see, the uplist as being, a significant opportunity to be able to do so, and be able to, introduce the company to new shareholders and still have that upside. I think those timelines, could be maybe, accelerated, sort of in the at an increased rate of, say, 25 or 50%, faster rate. But there would still be, there's a certain amount of work that needs to be done, again, especially on the exploration side, in order to set the groundwork and the development of the deposits, to allow for, a major plant expansion.
Nope, fair enough. And then another question popped in. Given your location, what are the security concerns, especially since the latest terrorist designation of the cartels?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. So we are in the state of Sinaloa. We are, we're a reasonable amount north of some of, where a lot of that activity, sort of, I guess, is centered in terms of the capital of Culiacan. Our offices are, we don't have any offices in Culiacan, although we do have some key suppliers like Caterpillar's, the local Caterpillar distributor is based there. But we haven't had any impact on our operations. Um, During the history of the company, and nor more recently. Again, as I mentioned about the road access, I mean, we're bringing up, some sort of supplies and that, and generally people every single day, on the road, which for just, regular vehicles, maybe takes 3 to 4 hours, and for heavier loads, 6 to 8 hours. We're bringing down concentrate every day, about 40 to 60 tons a day, and then again shipping that south about 600 miles to the Port of Manzanillo. So at the moment, we haven't had in the past or any impact in operations. And we have very strong support from the small town that we operate in. That's governed, as are many communities, or most remote communities in Mexico, by an ejido, which is a agrarian land association, as well as the general town council. And so we could, we're conscious of the situation generally in the region, but it doesn't have an impact on us.
And is the Hito, do they have, I guess upside in the project? Like, are they employed in many cases?
The Hito Association, not directly, but we do have employees. And sorry, there was a question earlier. Someone did ask about employees. We have about 415 total workforce. of which half is contracted, half is employee, and at any given point in time, only about a third of that, so say 100 and a little less than 150 people are on site at any given or at given or working in the mine at one point in time. So we operate, two shifts daily and with a third rotating shift. Um, and back to the Hito, we do have, as is the case with all all operations in Mexico, we have a lease agreement with the Hito, a multi-year lease agreement, and in order to be able to access the surface rights, which the Hito owns, we obviously through our concession rights have the rights to to mine and access the minerals from under below surface.
And then any potential issues with if tariffs are imposed?
I don't see any issues directly in our when we sell our product, for example, to ocean partners and they ship it. Most of it goes to first of all, we've sold it to them, and second of all, they're shipping most of that to smelters in China or in Asia generally, and some in Europe. And then as far as where possibly it might have an impact would be on possibly some supplies and equipment, ones that we had been are sourcing from the US, say Caterpillar, for example. And then likely I would imagine there would be an impact on generally on diesel costs in Mexico, as many of this group likely know, Mexico doesn't have any oil refineries, so all the crude that's produced is transported up to the U.S., refined and brought back into Mexico. So unless I was exempt, there may be a higher cost of diesel in Mexico in general.
Perfect. Appreciate all the questions. Nothing further at this time, so I'll let you continue on.
Uh, Great, thanks, Jim, and thanks everyone. The Just a summary. I mean, I've been mentioning, that this is basically a brand new team for the most part, and who are all, extremely excited about the direction of the company and this project, and again, especially on the exploration potential. Myself, Alonzo, who most recently was at Cerrado Gold, Dave Keogh, who's joined as interim COO. He worked with me previously at Goldcorp. He's one of the best operators, probably one of the top three operators that I've worked with in my whole career. And after Goldcorp, he was COO, as you can see there, of Gammon, Crocodile, and Gold Rock. Luis Portugal, as I mentioned, was for many years at Goldcorp. And then in subsequent years at a few other projects and companies, and most recently was a general manager at the Kusi mine, which was owned by Sierra Metals at the time. And also on the board level, there's been a number of changes in the board in the past 12 months. Quentin Henning, who's a well-known geologist, Brent Omlin, who's represents Ocean Partners. He's the co-CEO. And then more recently, just in January, Maria Virginia Anzola, a mining lawyer in Toronto, has joined the company. So, and then in the actual operations level, under working for Luis, there's say approximately seven managers or superintendents below him, and five out of seven have all been we've replaced in the past 6 months, and so it's a very focused team on making improvements, changes, and growing the company, focusing first and foremost on maximizing value out of San Jose de Gracia, and then looking to grow the company further. That's sort of the end of my general remarks, and I'm happy to take on any more questions if there are.
Terrific, Rohan. Appreciate that. Thank you for introducing the story to people on today's call, and thanks everyone for your questions. A reminder, if you do have questions, use the navigation pane at the bottom of the screen, click on the Q&A. We'll get those questions answered for you. I do see in terms of timing, we've got about 7 or 8 minutes remaining. So with that, if there are no questions that come in, some of the questions I like to ask at the end are sort of twofold. One, what keeps you up at night? And then two, what are you most excited about? And then if you want to sort of dovetail that into sort of some sort of concluding remarks, that would be terrific.
Uh, Great. Thanks, Jim. Yeah, so I mean, one of the main things that, gives me concern, I guess, a common across, a lot of underground mines is ensuring that we do have enough enough open faces and flexibility in our mining in order to both, fill the mill and also to provide, proper grade control and balance that and so on. So one of the main things we're doing to address that is bringing in this third underground mining contractor focused solely on underground mining. And we see that being, bringing greater consistency to our operations and on that, I mean, today, the target for this year is about 825 tons a day. The nameplate capacity in theory is 800, but we've run this plant higher than even 950 tons a day recently. But again, looking to kind of stabilize that in 825 or 850 tons a day, and with that greater focus on the underground. As far as what's most exciting, I mean, to me, first and foremost is the the geological potential of this area, the fact that there as unlike most other deposits in the whole general Sierra Madre region that have had some sort of mining, in the past 50 or 50 plus years, that and that we started very, very small, that there is still significant potential in both size and we believe in grade also. And then the second most exciting thing is using this as a basically a platform, an asset base to be able to grow, really a, exciting and great company, with the people that we've got involved, who share the same, the same vision there. And and also have a strong focus on how to identify accretive targets and increase value for all shareholders. So I think like this, the other most, I guess the most exciting thing is the timing. With this, the share price is low. The story is still quite very unknown. I mean, this is a beginning of just recently here with Tory Hills and just a tiny bit of other marketing. I mean, I can count on just a few hands really still that the number of individuals that we've spoken to about the story. And so we're obviously looking to increase that steadily as we get closer to an uplisting later in the year. So we're very excited about, I mean, this is definitely for me personally, and even some of the, I mean, several others on the team, the most exciting sort of deposit and general, sort of, I guess, package or platform that we've seen in a long time with all the right kind of characteristics.
Fantastic, Rohan. Appreciate that summary. And from my perspective, Rohan's been here just a relatively short period of time, but already getting lots of things completed. He's got an incredibly supportive shareholder base, and it's a catalyst-rich 2025. So with that in mind, we'll keep everybody up to date on the company's progress going forward. And today's keyword, the excitement in Q3 of an uplist, among other things. We'll use uplist as our keyword. And with that, I wish everybody a great weekend.
Great. Thanks, Jim.
Everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Catherine.
Thanks.